Hello, you guys. I am back with another YouTube video. Thank you for your patience. I'm very excited for this one because we are going to break down all of Water 7. This is it's going to be kind of a two-part video. I honestly took way more notes than I had originally anticipated for Water 7, so I will do a kind of separate part 2 video breaking down all of Enies Lobby, which I'm so excited to do. But Water 7, let's get into it. And I will say, as a disclaimer, all of my reactions and kind of initial thoughts going through these arcs are on my TikTok and Instagram. Let me know if you guys want kind of a compilation. I can kind of mesh those videos together and put them here. So let me know if you're interested in that or if you'd prefer just to stick with content like this. But yes, let me know either way. So Water 7, wow. This arc blew me away, and Enies Lobby destroyed me completely. I have finished Enies Lobby. I have not finished the post Enies Lobby arc. I wanted to take a break and kind of just ingest everything and think about everything that occurred within these two arcs specifically. So before we can talk about Water 7, we have to start, in my opinion, in Long Ring Longland, which is the arc. It's kind of the transitional arc between Skypiea and Water 7. And this arc, for the most part, is very goofy and silly. Apparently in the anime, it's very long and drawn out, which is why a lot of people don't like it. But I thought it was very well paced in the manga. And overall, this arc, again, it was just goofy and fun. There was nothing too crazy and serious, but we did see that it tested the crew's teamwork, right? Especially with Zoro and Sanji. When Chopper was taken, they were planning and fighting to get him back. And we see Luffy make the statement that he will defend his crewmates even if it kills him. And that's very good foreshadowing for these next two arcs. And while this has a goofy and fun exterior, toward the ending, there's a shift in the mood. The winds change, right? And we see the introduction of who we now know after reading Enies Lobby is Kuzan. He is one of the four admirals of the Navy, and when Robin sees him step out, she is terrified. Robin is usually very stoic, she's very calm. She, definitely has a firm mask that she keeps in place. And when she sees Kuzan, that shatters. She is terrified. And the crew is immediately in defense of her. And they're like, "Who are you? Why are you making her so upset?" And he goes, "Oh, calm down, it's all right. Robin and I go way back, but wow, you've really grown up." And it goes on to show that this man has an incredibly massive amount of power, much more so than Luffy or any other member of the crew. And we know that he's a high up member, right, of the world government. There's only four of them. And I really feel like this showcases what the crew has in store for them later down the road. And it just feels very sinister. There's a very sinister, foreboding type of feeling that you get as you get ready to go to Water 7. Kuzan mentions that he owes a debt to Luffy's grandfather, which is why he will let him go from this, and he won't capture or kill him. And he really wants to get rid of Robin immediately, but the crew, manages to defend her. He does freeze her completely, but they're able to whisk her away. And he freezes Luffy. And I found it very interesting that he knows who Luffy's grandfather is. Um, just very interesting for such a goofy arc. It had such an intense ending. So, as the crew gets Luffy back and as he's pedaling away in the ocean on his little water bike, um, he wonders where they're headed next, and he says that they're going to Water 7, which he says is very close to the Navy headquarters. So there's already a lot to kind of think about and ponder as we get into Water 7. And the crew decides, they've got all of this gold, right, from Skypiea, and they decide that they want to fix Mary up because she is just as much of a crewmate as they are, and she's going to be their home. And they also decide that they're going to look for a carpenter because Water 7 basically has the best carpenters on all of the sea, all of the world. So they're very, very excited and optimistic going into Water 7. And then we get to Water 7, and it starts off great. Nami, Usopp, and Luffy all go to the gold exchange. And I love that Nami is so advanced and knows about, she's very, very intelligent. She knows about money, she knows about navigation, and immediately the teller, I think he was only trying to give them 100 million. They ended up getting $3 million, which I know that's not their currency, to fix Mary, set some aside for themselves. They are so excited, and I will say it immediately made me nervous that they were carrying this much money around in 3 suitcases. It was very terrifying. So Luffy just about lost his suitcase, so Usopp then takes the suitcase and he loses the responsibility of carrying that much money. So as they go down to see the shipwrights, they go down to the docks to see if they can get a quote or an assessment on what Mary needs to be fixed. And we meet these shipwrights and Mayor Iceberg. So Mayor Iceberg is a carpenter himself. And then we meet some of the other people involved here. There's Khalifa, his secretary. There's Kaku, who has this really amazing ability to get to the dock very quickly to assess Mary. We see a guy named Polly who looks a lot like Smoker. And then we also see a man named Lucci. There's a few others sprinkled in, but these are very cool looking carpenter people. And you're already kind of wondering, are one of these going to join the crew? I was very interested in Lucci. It was between Lucci and Kaku for me personally on if one of them would join. Polly as well. Polly, I was wondering about Polly. So as they are waiting for this assessment and they're kind of talking about what they would do, Usopp disappears. And they realize that he's gone, and so are the 2 suitcases full of $200 million. So they frantically go off to search for him, and it's Nami who finds him, and he is not in a good way at all. He is severely beaten, and he's just left in the street, essentially. And he is so deeply ashamed of his loss here. So deeply ashamed. He lost the money. He says he can't face the guys because he is just so embarrassed that he lost. And Nami says, "Don't worry about the money right now. Don't worry about it," because he's also panicking because they're like, "We're not going to be able to fix Mary," right? So Nami says, "Just hang tight. I'm going to go get the guys. We're going to figure out who did this to you." Usopp, he doesn't want to face them. He doesn't want to face them. And he thinks that, he hears that it was probably the Frankie family. And so he finds out where their house is and he picks himself up and he goes to their house to confront them. This does not go well. This really doesn't go well. Frankie had left to go and spend the 200 million immediately. And who is left is there to laugh at Usopp, and he gets beaten again. It is a double major humiliating slap in the face. And around this time also, Luffy hears the report. Zoro and Luffy and the rest of the crew at this point find out that the Mary is totaled. She is beyond repair. She's got a crack in the main support beam. Naturally, everyone is devastated by this and they don't want to believe it. And they genuinely are like, "I'm so sorry, but there's no way." Like, once that main support beam is cracked, there's nothing that you can do because it's the foundation of the ship. So, while Luffy especially is reeling from this revelation that they're not going to be able to fix Mary, they then go and find Usopp, and he's again completely beaten, and it's a really rough sight. And so it's Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Chopper. They find him, they're very upset, and they go to the Frankie house and they tear him up. I was very hyped for this scene. I was very hyped. and they beat him down. They beat them good. And after they are done fighting, Luffy makes the decision that they're going to have to say goodbye to the Going Merry. So when Usopp wakes up, and he immediately starts panicking and asking about the Mary, how they're going to fix her. Since he lost the money, he's trying to think of ways they could, scrape together some cash to fix her. And Luffy says, okay, I'm going to stop you. Look, we can buy one of these used ones. He's talking about all of the different ships that they could look at buying within the 100 million that they have. And Usopp goes, what are you talking about? So Luffy then says, because you gotta remember, I feel like Luffy's coping mechanism is optimism and positivity, right? He's always got his smile, and he's really heavily leaning on that here. And so he says, the Mary's totaled, but we can get a new ship, it's fine. And Usopp naturally is incredibly upset by this. He doesn't believe that she's done for, and he can't believe that Luffy and the crew would so easily give up on her and want to replace her. I will say, on my initial look back of this and what goes on in this section, I had a lot of people talk about how much they disliked Usopp for this, and I have many thoughts on Usopp and what happens in this arc, in this fight and disagreement specifically. But before we go into that, Usopp, he's incredibly upset. He thinks that the crew is going to abandon and replace him. And then he says, if you're going to get rid of the Mary that easily, you'll get rid of me because I don't have any special powers. I contribute nothing, basically. And he decides to quit the crew before they can quit on him. And everyone's very upset. He and Luffy get into quite literally a physical altercation. And Luffy, surprisingly, is not doing well with this at all. Normally, Luffy's emotional intelligence is very high, but I do believe that his own deep and intense grief that he is trying to wrangle with Mary has severely clouded his judgment here. And he almost says something that he is going to regret when Sanji literally kicks him to snap him out of it. And the crew, obviously, this is the first major infighting altercation that they have had, and it rocks all of them. So Usopp leaves, and he says, I want to fight you, Luffy, for the Going Merry. So Luffy agrees to fight him, and when Usopp returns, he goes all out in this fight with Luffy. And you got to think, right? He's been with Luffy since Syrup Village, which was way back at the beginning of the series. So he, next to Zoro, he has been with Luffy the longest. And naturally, he knows how Luffy is going to fight. And he brought his everything because he was fighting for his ship, for his crewmate. He was very passionate about this. And there's a direct correlation between, again, Usopp's opinion of Mary and then what he thinks the crew thinks of himself. So this was a very personal fight and battle for him. And Luffy he's getting roughed up pretty good, not only because Usopp knows how to fight him, but because he doesn't want to fight his crewmate. He doesn't want to fight his friend. But eventually he has to, and he knocks out Usopp, and he's just so torn. And the whole crew, Nami and Chopper are openly weeping and crying. It's a very terribly emotional moment for this crew. You can feel the heartbreak and the fracture. And Luffy is feeling really torn over what he just did. And it's actually Zoro that speaks up. He's been very quiet. And he speaks up and says, Luffy, you can't second guess yourself. You had to do this, so stick with your decision. You need to be a captain. You need to man up. And this is the role that you have chosen. So you need to be the captain in this moment. But he also does say, let's leave the ship to Usopp anyway and be done with it. So they leave him some medical supplies and they go on their way. And again, I just want to, I feel like I'll do an Usopp deep dive as well after I have done my reviews on Water 7 and Enies Lobby together. But to those who don't like Usopp or have an issue with him in this moment, you have to remember that Usopp, up until this point, has been doing all of the repairs mainly on the Mary because they don't have a carpenter. So Usopp is doing the thankless kind of behind the scenes work on the ship. He's very attached and bonded to her. And not to mention, also, this ship was given to him by Kaya and her family and her house. So he's got a very personal connection to this ship. So it's not simply just he wants to go against Luffy. This is a very complex, deeply layered situation and problem with for Usopp. And throughout the arcs we've seen, we've gone through Alabasta now and Skypiea. And Zoro is very talented. He can fight with 3 swords at one time. Luffy has devil fruit powers. Robin has devil fruit powers. On top of this, Sanji has these super strong legs, and Chopper can transform and do all these different things. And he feels really insecure because he feels like he doesn't have anything to offer. And it's a really sad situation because he's very insecure. And a lot of people harp on him too because he's cowardly. And a lot of people harped on him as well with this fight because they said that he went all out in this fight, but then he never goes all out in the other fights. He always is like crying and running away. And I'm sorry, but if you say that, then you are not reading any of this manga. There are many times where Usopp is badly beaten and still comes out in a last minute to save a crew member or to do one last stand. He fights his fear and it's very relatable. Usopp is, in my opinion, the most realistic and relatable character in all of One Piece. And I think it's going to stay that way. He is a young, scared kid, right? He lies to cope. He's got some pretty serious trauma. He's got abandonment issues, right? His father left to be part of Shanks' crew, and his mother was sick and died when he was just a boy. And he's been alone a lot of his life, and he couldn't prevent his mom going. He couldn't prevent his dad going. He, there's been a theme with this here. There's been a theme, and he's been rescued by his crewmates many times. And he copes by lying. That's his whole thing, right? From the minute we met him in Syrup Village, he was lying about who he is, or he lies about these grand adventures that he's gone on. But what I find quite interesting is that he's gone on all of these amazing adventures with the crew already, with Skypiea and the floating islands and Alabasta and everything that occurred there. And yet he still finds it necessary to lie and come up with these wild, amazing stories, even though he's lived them. And I truly believe that it's because, again, he doesn't see his value or his contribution in any of the adventures that they've had. And that's such a sad thing. He did an amazing job with Chopper back in Alabasta. And, he got the crew out of a couple really tight moments in Skypiea. He didn't have as much of a showcase, I feel like, in Skypiea, but it's naturally because he goes through so much in this saga. And, even with all of his experimenting with the dial power that he got from Skypiea afterward, all of his innovation, Long Ring Longland, it's just a really cool thing. He made Nami's weapon for her. He's done all these amazing things, and yet he cannot acknowledge and admit or see the value in any of those things because he is that deeply insecure and convinced of his own self-worth. And it's just a really sad situation. And on top of all of this going on, right? Robin is gone. Robin has left. They can't find her. So truly, they they truly feel like the crew is falling apart. And this is huge because again, they have not had a moment like this where they've had a severe fight and they're this fractured as a group. And, Luffy, again, too, is truly tested as a captain in this moment. He has never, Luffy, up until this point, has very much just been a friend, and especially to Usopp. I feel like Usopp and Zoro have been kind of the friends, right? Like in Arlong Park, and when he gave Nami his hat, that was very much a moment for him as a crewmate and a friend, but a captain, right? It was a captain and his crew. He was telling her that they were going to go take care of these guys because she is a Nakama, she is part of his crew. But he doesn't really have a moment like that with Zoro or especially with Usopp. I feel like they're very much friends, and this is a moment where he needs to set his foot down. But it's just a very bad clashing of heads. Again, Luffy handles things with optimism, and Usopp is very emotional. He doesn't, he lies to protect himself, but in this raw moment, they just cannot get past their own grief and issues in order to have a proper conversation and get to the true root of the problem here. So after this devastation, the crew finds out about something called Aqua Laguna, which is essentially this massive storm that comes and just wrecks Water 7 every year. It's very dangerous. A lot of the city is evacuating on the sea train to the neighboring island until they can come back and rebuild after the storm has gone. So at this point, Luffy meets Frankie, and he's ticked. He's not very happy. This is the first time we see Frankie, and I will say I was not expecting a Speedo of all things. Very interesting character. And then we also find out that he is a cyborg. I'm sorry, there are cyborgs in One Piece now? He's such an enigma. I mean, genuinely. I thought that he was going to be much more kind of menacing and sinister than he is, and he's pretty goofy for how much damage he inflicted on Usopp. I really was not a fan of him at this point. Sanji and Chopper, after finding out about Aqua Laguna, they go and talk loudly about it right outside the merry-go to help warn Usopp. So Usopp doesn't realize who had warned him, but he does hear about Aqua Laguna, so he immediately goes out to try to buy some supplies to fix up Mary before this massive storm hits. After warning Usopp, Sanji and Chopper continue their search for Robin, and she ends up finding them. And it's a great joyous moment, but it's short-lived because she tells them that she's leaving the crew, that there's a darkness inside her, and she's only going to bring the crew harm if she stays. And obviously, Sanji and Chopper are very distraught and they try to find her, but she slips away. And then on top of this, we find out that an assassination attempt has been made on Mayor Iceberg, and the Straw Hats are being framed because they say that Robin was with them and Robin was a part of the Straw Hat crew. So we don't know if she's trying to frame them. We don't know what is going on. There was a mysterious individual in a mask that had said something to her. And so obviously she's being roped into this, but we don't know what the circumstances are. We don't know if it's blackmail. We don't know if she has a former allegiance to these people. We don't know what's going on at all. That is until we get to this next section where Robin comes back to finish off Iceberg. She comes off to finish the job, and it's revealed that she wants these ancient blueprints that Iceberg has to make an ancient weapon, very much similar to the supposed weapons that are told about in the poneglyphs. So Iceberg detests Robin because she can read the poneglyphs, and if she's a member of the government, that she can help them find whatever these ancient weapons are. He thinks that she's very dangerous just by being alive, and we wonder who she's working for or working with when we get perhaps the nastiest betrayal that I have ever witnessed. I kid you not, my jaw was on the floor. It was the shipwrights, plus the bartender, plus Khalifa. Lucci, Kaku, they were undercover government agents. They had betrayed Iceberg, and you guys, I could not believe it. But I was mortified. I thought that they were all so deeply devoted to Iceberg, and I understand that they're these incredibly talented top secret agents, but it hurt. It really hurt. I thought that one of these people was going to be the next crewmate. So the betrayal ran so deeply, and you can see that Iceberg is completely floored and shocked as well. We do find out that Polly is not in on it. Thank goodness, because I really like Polly, but he is just as devastated and betrayed. And these people just get really cold really quick. Now that the cover is blown, and I think they've been undercover for 3 to 5 years at this point, if I am correct. So they've been there a long time, but they have absolutely no allegiance to Iceberg, to Water 7, to anybody. They are very much cold, calculated, professional assassins and undercover agents, and it really stings. You guys did say in my comments as well that Oda did not know that the shipwrights were going to be CP9 members, and that's why it just seemed so believable. So basically, there's a big fight and standoff. Luffy tries to defeat Lucci, but he has eaten the cat fruit, and he's a leopard, I believe, and he defeats Zoro and Luffy pretty bad, pretty quick. They have something called the six powers where they can move really quick, they can strengthen their bodies, a bunch of other things. It's really cheap, honestly. So they throw Luffy and Zoro into the sea and they kick Nami out of the building as well because they want to burn down the mansion and be done with it. Chopper, thankfully, is still there and he manages to grab Iceberg and drag him out of the building before it burns to the ground. So after this, we cut to Frankie and Usopp. Frankie had taken Usopp hostage to try to lure Luffy to him because he wanted to take revenge on what they had done to his house and to his fellow Frankie family members. And immediately we are met with Frankie crying, saying that it's such a tragic story as Usopp fills him in on what he and the crew are arguing about and how they are no longer friends or crewmates. And it was just such a shocking thing. Again, Frankie is such an enigma here. He looks goofy, he's a cyborg, but now he's suddenly very emotional and caring about Usopp and this in this situation. There's his two sisters that are crying with him. It was such a shocking thing for me. I mean, reeling. So we find out that the shipwrights are bad, and then all of a sudden Frankie has a heart and he's emotional and honestly like vibing with Usopp, who he beat twice in a row and stole 200 million from him. Talk about whiplash, okay? If there is a word that I could use to describe this saga, it is, well, on top of emotional devastation, it would be whiplash. And only Oda truly could make me change my mind on a character I detested in like 2 pages. Because I already was like, okay, like Frankie's a cool guy and he's trying to actually, he apologizes to Usopp and is like, hey, you should join my family. And Usopp's like, no thanks. I need to fix the Mary. We're going to go on our own adventures together. And Frankie goes, hold up, this ship is KO'd. It's done for, actually. And Usopp immediately gets angry again and says, no, it's not. And Frankie says, yes, it is. You need to say goodbye. You need to dismantle her. And I should say as well, I don't think I've mentioned it, Frankie dismantles ships, whether it's pirate ships or ships, again, that are totaled and no longer work. They break this stuff down and then they basically sell it. They sell the parts off to make a profit. So, in order to convince Usopp about Mary's condition, he ends up throwing Usopp into the water. And as Usopp is down in the water, you can very clearly see the crack in Mary's main support beam. So once Usopp gets out of the water, he completely loses it and breaks down and says that he knew that Mary was done for, that he knew there was too much damage. You guys, it's such a heartbreaking moment. It is such a heartbreaking moment because he has been trying to, again, put on this brave face, even though he's so devastated and terrified. He's been trying to lie to himself and lie to everybody that Mary can be fixed. And he has so much guilt because he was the one who fixed her. So he feels like he didn't take good enough care of her, that he failed in not doing her repairs properly. It's such a devastating scene. He's so devastated, that she is truly beyond repair. And Frankie says, and Usopp also at this point mentions that he saw someone or something working on her in Skypiea. And he thinks that it was kind of a manifestation of Mary, right? Like if she somehow became sentient. And Frankie chimes in at this point and says that it was probably Clawbauterman. Forgive me if the pronunciation is off. And this is actually fascinating because it's a real tale. Essentially, if a ship is really well cared for, it can kind of manifest this figure that they call Clawbauterman to help fix the ship or guide the ship and watch over the crew. And this only appears when ships are very loved and cared for. And Frankie says this. And he says that, if she's so loved, that trying to save her and make her sail anymore in this condition is cruel. And Usopp disagrees and he says, no, abandoning her is cruel. And you can so clearly see both sides, right? Because it's like a family member who's dying, right? It's, or think about it like if, someone on life support. Is it cruel to keep them on life support knowing that they're not going to make it, or that there's a very low chance of it ever happening? Or is it abandoning, if you end that life support and when there's a minuscule chance that a miracle could happen? And that's where they're at here. And it's just really devastating. You don't, especially now that Usopp has left the crew, the Mary is the only thing of that crew that he has left. So naturally, he's just so upset and defensive and emotional about this. So as they're arguing and talking through this, CP9 arrives to look for the blueprints because it was revealed that Mayor Iceberg and a guy named Cuddy Flam used to work for the man named Tom, who originally had the blueprints. So when they realized that Iceberg doesn't have the blueprints, they must have gone to Cuddy Flam, who they realize is Frankie. So Frankie and Iceberg have a past together. So they bust through Frankie's hideout and one of the walls, and they see the blueprints. They see this kind of hidden room, and there's a picture with him and a man named Mr. Tom, Iceberg, and it goes into Frankie's flashback. So, in Frankie's flashback, there was a lot to uncover here as well. We see a man named Tom, he's a fish man, just honestly adorable. He looks like Santa Claus, but like as a fish. He's a carpenter, he loves what he does, he loves to laugh, and we see a young Frankie and a young Iceberg. They're together, they are his students, if you will, and Tom always emphasizes to them to be proud of their work, to be confident in what they build, and to claim ownership on what they build. So Frankie wants to build powerful weapons, powerful things that can take down the things called Neptunians. And then there's Iceberg, who's, kind of naturally he follows Tom directly and does things to the letter. So two halves, yin and yang, if you will. Very much a brotherly rivalry and dynamic between Iceberg and Frankie, or Cuddy Flam in this. So they're going about their day when a judicial Navy ship pulls up and they arrest Tom. And he's put on trial because Tom built the Oro Jackson, which is what former Pirate King Goldie Roger built. We find out that Tom built the Oro Jackson, which is the ship, the massive ship that successfully took Goldie Roger around the world. It survived on the seas, and because of that, they want to execute him. They find him guilty by association because Tom proudly admits that he built that ship because he's not going to be ashamed of what he built, and he doesn't think it's a crime to build a ship. So because he fully admits that, they basically take that like he was in conspiracy, that he aided the Pirate King, so therefore he's guilty. So Tom says, well, wait, before you execute me, Aqua Laguna is about to wipe out Water 7, and I have a plan to save it. I'm going to build a sea train. So the people of the island really love this idea because they have been torn apart by these storms for ages. So the judge gives him 10 years to build this sea train and save Water 7 before his execution is to be carried out. And Tom does just that. It is groundbreaking innovation and invention, and he builds the sea train so that people can get on board and escape safely before the town gets wreckaged, and it'll help increase trade, all sorts of things. And Tom does this. It's really awesome. And then we meet Spandam. For those of you who have not watched my videos, I call this man Mr. Spam. I give nicknames to the people I don't like. This is one of the most rotten, dirty, terrible, lying, and cheating individuals that we have come across so far. He is a terrible piece of work. So he has been tasked with finding these blueprints that Tom has, and he wants to make it happen. So he thinks it's going to be easy peasy. Once the judicial ship returns, Tom will be taken to get executed, and then he can go and find the blueprints. Well, this doesn't happen. The judge finds him innocent, or he pardons him because he built the sea train and did so much for Water 7. Mr. Spandam obviously is very not happy about this. So he gathers all of Frankie's discarded weapons and ships that are powerful enough to defeat these Neptunians. He has done it, and he hasn't gotten rid of them. He's just kind of left them there and stashed them. So Mr. Spandam uses this to his advantage, and he uses them to frame Mr. Tom and his company, his workers essentially, into attacking the people of Water 7 and the judicial ship. It's a complete setup, and Frankie and Iceberg are devastated. I mean, Frankie in particular, because one of the weapons severely hurts and impales Mr. Tom. And so they get into a massive fight, Frankie and Iceberg, because Iceberg had told Frankie multiple times to dismantle and get rid of the weapons. And Frankie says, oh, they're not mine. I didn't like them. And Mr. Tom gets very upset. We don't really ever see him get angry, but he gets very angry at Frankie and says, "Don't you ever deny something that you built or not love what you built. Take ownership of it. If there's anything I taught you, be proud of what you built and own it." So Mr. Tom ends up taking the fall for his crewmates. So he asks that the judge would pardon the crime of attacking the judicial ship, pardoning his workers, but he only gets one pardon. So the pardon of him building the Oro Jackson is now reinstated, and he is carted off to Enies Lobby to be judged and eventually, I believe, led to Impel Down, where he is going to be executed. So obviously, Frankie and Iceberg are just devastated. So are Kokoro. She's part of this at this point as well. And it's just so devastating. Frankie is so upset with Spandam, and he punches him in the face quite severely. And he stands in front of the sea train as they take Tom away, and it runs him over. It's not a great moment. And Iceberg is alone, and he decides to, he follows in Tom's footsteps and he becomes mayor. He's a very good worker. When Frankie reappears. He looks very different. He's a cyborg now. He survived the sea train incident, but he's now a cyborg. Iceberg, while still angry with him, is admittedly very happy that he's still alive. Just such a sad emotional moment. You see, once word of Tom's execution had reached them, you see that Kokoro is drinking, and Iceberg says, hopefully, the next time we drink, it'll be for fun. They become drinking buddies. It's just very sad. You kind of see that Tom was very much the glue that held them together, and Iceberg goes on to try to do just that as well. So we go back to the present, and CP9 is there. They take the blueprints, and they also take Frankie hostage because, again, he's got the blueprints, so they take him. And they push Mary into the sea. And Usopp's face when they do that is just devastating. He lets out this guttural scream. It literally is like killing one of his teammates in front of him, right? It's very brutal. So at this point, Nami is conscious, so is Iceberg. They were saved by Chopper, or the townspeople got Nami, but she was seen to, and Iceberg is better. And he talks to Nami and says that he misjudged Robin, that she explained something called a buster call, which is where essentially a bunch of the Navy ships will come and they were going to blow Water 7 to smithereens. And she clearly has personal experience with this. And she says that she's been talking about a wish she wants to fulfill. We find out that the wish is that she wants the Straw Hats to be able to leave Water 7 safely. And the only way for that wish to happen is if she conceded with CP9's demands and she went with them quietly and again helped assassinate Iceberg and everything else and get the blueprints. So Nami is so happy that Robin did not betray them, but also she's really devastated, right? Because she's being taken away to be executed at Enies Lobby or Impel Down. So at this point, Zoro and Luffy are missing, and Aqua Laguna is right on the surface. They are so, it's on the cusp of coming, and so they desperately need to find Luffy and Zoro. So everyone's trying to find them, and then Nami sees from a distance that Luffy is stuck between two buildings. And she races towards him and just screams at him, "What are you doing? You've been goofing off this whole time. When Robin is in trouble, they're gonna take her away because we couldn't save her and she cared for us." And it's such a sweet moment from Nami. I feel like Nami doesn't always get as many moments, but I really loved this moment from her. And Luffy quite literally just breaks the buildings apart to escape. So Chopper at this point also finds Zoro, who's wedged in a chimney. So Chopper gives him a sword and he slices the chimney to bits. And then Luffy grabs all of them and gets up to safety before this massive wave hits. And we also, at this same time, see Sanji knew that Robin was lying and he went to the train station to try to look for her. Sure enough, he sees her and the rest of CP9, and it's revealed that they are heading early. So it's revealed that CP9 is leaving earlier than scheduled because they want to beat the storm. So I did get ahead of myself. This did happen before Aqua Laguna hit. Nami, after hearing Iceberg, had run to the train station to try to stop her, and of course was too late. So she runs to go find Luffy and Zoro. She finds out that Sanji had boarded the train in secret to try to get her back, and he's not the only one. Frankie was captured along with Robin, and they've also got Usopp. So Sanji sees Usopp there as well. So he's like, okay, I gotta hop on this train because Robin and Usopp are on here. They're in trouble. So after Aqua Laguna hits, they're trying to figure out what to do. The last sea train has left, so there's no way for them to follow. When Kokoro says, "I've got you covered. I can help you get a train." And she introduces them to this secret hidden train called Rocket Man that goes very fast. Basically, once it starts, it doesn't stop. So they're all excited. They're getting ready to go when the Frankie family also comes and asks if they can join them to help get Frankie back. And Luffy says the more the merrier, much to kind of everyone's dismay. But, they realize that they need all hands on deck and they want to rescue their family member just like the crew wants to rescue. So Sanji ends up rescuing. So on the train, Sanji has some great moments here. And again, I will be talking much more about Sanji in Enies Lobby, but Sanji has Sanji's such a subtle character, right? His plans, oftentimes he goes alone and does it, not because he's looking for danger, but it's simply because it's what needs to be done. It's the best option for the crew. Sanji is such a subtle character, and I feel like when he goes off on things like this, it's such a great highlight moment for him. I loved seeing him kind of kick and battle his way through the train. He does eventually get to Frankie and they team up, and then they run into who we find out is Sniper King. We've never seen this guy before. He has a long nose and a mask and hair that all looks very kind of like someone else we know. That whole bit was very comedic, and I have watched his little song and reacted to that as well. Let me know if you want to see my reaction to that. I can put the video in. So together they all kind of join forces and they're battling their way through the train. And at this point too, Luffy, Zoro, and crew are all on their way. And at some point, Sanji and Usopp and Frankie cut a couple of the train cars, so they're just sitting on the middle of the tracks. So when the two cars come up, they're like, "What are we gonna do? We're gonna run right into them." And Luffy just goes, "Zoro, cut the train. Cut it in half." And Zoro goes, "Cool." And he cuts the train in half. It was such an awesome moment. It was so awesome. It's such a highlight for Zoro. And I really love Luffy and Zoro's dynamic. Zoro is such a good first mate. He very much is dedicated and loyal to his captain. And I love that Luffy just, they're the two powerhouses of the crew, I feel like. So they just get each other on that level. Luffy has complete confidence that Zoro can just casually slice through two train cars like it's nothing, and he does. And it's just a great moment. I loved that bit. So at this point, they get to CP9 and they're trying to rescue Robin. Not going very well. Sanji and Frankie are both struggling. Sniper King shoots a kind of like a smoke bomb, grabs Robin, and says that Robin is ours, and he grabs her to run away. He then gets beat and he looks at Robin and says, "Have faith in Luffy." And it's such a great moment because, he knows that Luffy is going to come for her. She could organize whatever way that she wanted to run away, and Luffy is going to come for her and find her and rescue her. At this point, the former bartender in Water 7 talks about O'Hara. I don't know if he specifically mentions O'Hara at this point, but he talks about Robin and says that she was part of a Buster Call and she's like one of the only survivors at just 8 years old. So we can definitely tell that there's some massive devastation and trauma in Robin's background and story, right? Robin doesn't want to be rescued because she thinks that she just brings down misfortune on anybody and everybody. And Frankie at this point looks at her and says, "Existing is not a crime." And it's such a powerful statement, both in the story and in today's world, right? Such a powerful, good moment from Frankie. And again, it's amazing how Oda has been able to introduce, establish, change, and develop Frankie in one arc. I mean, it's just incredible. I really was such a fan of him at this point. He seems like just a great guy. And I'm happy that he's with Robin here, trying to look out for her and convince her that she does have worth and value as a person. So shortly after this, they arrive at Enies Lobby. Luffy and crew catch up and they meet Sniper King, Luffy and Chopper do not realize that Sniper King is anybody else that they could possibly know. And with that, we are at Enies Lobby. So I will pause here, and maybe this weekend or sometime very soon, I will record a deep dive for Enies Lobby. I promise you it will not be too long. But this Water 7 was just incredible, and I appreciate it so much more now that I have finished Enies Lobby. There's so many things that just come full circle. If Water 7 was the breaking of the crew, Enies Lobby is the making of the family. You can't have one half without the other, in my opinion. They go together and they mesh so beautifully and phenomenally. I'm blown away by the writing done in these two arcs. You guys told me that it was great, and it absolutely was. So I hope I covered everything. I hope I didn't leave anything too bad out or too big out. Again, feel free to discuss in the comments anything that I missed. And again, if you guys want any of my reactions, or if you want me to compile my TikTok videos and put them on here so that you can view, I kind of updated as I read for quite a bit of this and Enies Lobby. So let me know if you'd like a compilation of that. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I will be back with part 2 very soon.